All right, Zatima fans. Now, ironically enough, Zatima won't be featured exclusively in this video. This video is pretty much a follow-up on the video I did yesterday about, if there are or is another couple from any Tyler Perry project that comes close to the same level of popularity as Zatima. A lot of people responded no. And while doing research, going through the catalog of Tyler Perry plays and movies and shows, there are some popular couples from during those respective projects' time. But in reality, Zatima is the standout couple above the rest. So this video will be me talking about, I want to say five of the top couples amongst the Tyler Perry franchise. Now, it's subjective, keep that in mind, and believe it or not, this video is really constructed from the comments on the video and Instagram post, and on Twitter, the post I made a couple days ago. That's been one of my biggest tweets in a while, especially since Sistas has been off the air. So the number of retweets and likes and comments really paved the way for making this video the way that it is now. So let me just say, Zatima won't be included in the list since it's at the top of the Mount Everest, and we're pretty much going down from there. So I will say straight up, there are maybe one or two honorable mentions I will put in this video, but that's about it. I feel like we have a very, very, very small pool of couples to pull from. And to be honest, some of the popular ones that people want to argue, technically they were never really couples. Some of these things were affairs or, one night stands, but overall they never really ended up together. So, without further ado, I would say number 5, based on the comments that I saw, I would put that Orlando and Helen from Diary of a Mad Black Woman. At the end of the movie, they got back together after not having the best of first impressions. Orlando was there to help out Helen after she got thrown out of her own house. I believe he was, helping pack up the moving truck and everything. And throughout the movie, she eventually warmed up to him. And at the end, they got together. And I feel like that was a solid journey. Keep in mind, Diary of a Mad Black Woman was one of the early Tyler Perry projects. I think his first big movie. He wasn't the sole writer, director, producer, so that story had a bit more structure than a lot of his later work. So it was really Tyler Perry at his, I guess, maybe most focused to an extent, or you could say that he had other people around him to kind of keep his stories as fine-tuned as possible. And I really do like this pairing. I mean, we really saw the development and the growth. Obviously, it was a movie, so it doesn't have the same amount of time to develop characters as 1 or 2 seasons of a television show. I believe we really just saw a montage of these two in their relationship. Then it got to the point where she was questioning whether or not she would get back together with her abusive ex-husband due to the fact that she was helping him recover. But then in the end, she decided to be with Orlando. So they did have some ups and downs, but we really did see a beautiful journey between the two. So yeah, I agree with people saying that it was definitely towards the top. And based on the list here, yeah, this is one of 2 movie couples. Number 4. I saw a lot of people talk about this, but Brad and Marcy from If Loving You Was Wrong, to me, they were, I guess you could say, they came together as a result of their mutual pain due to their spouse's affair. Not to mention, when these two got together, you could tell that it was just out of spite of Alex and Randall. And I mean, it just never really felt like Brad and Marcy were on the same page, outside of the disdain for their spouse or spouses. I mean, you got moments where Brad pulls out an engagement ring and, Marcy is saying, no, I don't want to get married yet. And then the tables turn. It's like they were never really on the same wavelength. It's like, one of them wanted to move forward in the relationship, and then the other one was like, no, I think we're moving too fast. I mean, hell, wasn't it some point where Brad did pull out the engagement ring? Marcy's like, Brad, put that away. And then when Randall burst into, what was it, like, I think at the house or whatever, or was it a hotel room? I forgot. But essentially, Randall busted in the room, and, Marcy was just so fed up with him that she blurted it out. Yeah, Brad, he pulled out an engagement ring. We're getting married. Or I think he even gave her the ring, and she just put it on just to spite Randall. So it felt like Brad was more invested in the Marcy relationship than Marcy was. And Marcy really only used that relationship to flaunt it in front of Randall. And then not to mention, Brad has 2 kids to consider, so he really didn't want to showcase Marcy as his new love interest because obviously the kids still love their mom. And at the end of the series, he was willing to let his ex-wife take the fall for a murder that Marcy committed. I still say it was, self-defense, but the fact that he was willing to sacrifice his ex-wife to let Marcy get off the hook was stupid. So yeah, I really didn't root for this couple because I think I said it when the final episodes aired. They really just assassinated these characters. Number 3, Ella and Curtis. I really don't need to say a lot. House of Pain icons, Tyler Perry. I guess you could argue outside of the plays, kind of like the Fantastic Four is the first family of Marvel, the Paynes was the first family of Tyler Perry Studios. The fact that, Curtis and Ella, their son Calvin, nephew CJ, and by marriage, niece Janine, and then from there, you have Malik and Jasmine. These two have been through it. The fact that they are I'd say the gold standard. I mean, they're the Harriet and Carl Winslow of Tyler Perry projects, if you ask me. Pretty much a well-established marriage dynamic. They've been through the highs and lows of life, and they pretty much ride this thing out together. So, I mean, yeah, it's definitely more on the comical side, with Ella being the holy sanctified one of the dynamic, where Curtis is anything but there are truly moments where it seems like, despite Curtis taking advantage of Ella being sexist and selfish and whatnot, he has had plenty of selfless moments throughout the series as well. So like I said, there really isn't anything I can say about Curtis and Ella that hasn't been said before. So these two definitely make their way on the list. Number 2, Angela and Marcus from For Better or Worse. I'm pretty sure I messed up the name in the other video. I think I might have said Helen or something instead of Angela. But like I said, don't have a lot of personal experience with this show. But I will say that, if I'm not mistaken, these two were in the Why Did I Get Married movie, and they got their own show. So it could be argued that these two were kind of the original Zatima, in that they were a couple so popular that they winded up getting their own spin-off series, which turned out to be very successful in its own right. An argument could be made that The Paynes was technically the second show in that same category, given that The Paynes was a spin-off series of House of Pain, where you took Curtis and Ella, moved them to another state, and started over. But I feel like that show was just so... it didn't feel like the same Curtis and Ella. And if you watch my reviews from back in the day, that show like struck a nerve, because these two were at their worst. Yes, even Ella was an awful person for a majority of this show. I mean, it was hard to tell, even with her sanctified personality being dialed up to 11. There were moments where she made so many selfish decisions that it felt like I was watching Curtis. But yeah, I feel like the fact that that show bombed so spectacularly, it's best not to put that in the conversation. So yeah, I think that Angela and Marcus were kind of the original Zatima, in that they got a spinoff from a wildly popular Tyler Perry project. So I still don't really see the appeal of these two, because from what I do remember of the show, Angela was really loud and domineering personality, where Marcus was kind of written to be the weak man. So as a result, they did have moments where they had tender, moments between the two, but really it's only when Marcus put his foot down, or Angela realized she was wrong about something, were those sweet moments ever really there. So I feel like, for me, not my top 5, but like I said, maybe that's just because I didn't watch the show a lot, so I don't really have that nostalgia or connection to these two. But Angela and Marcus, I definitely see the comments saying that they are the contenders for Zatima. Now, before moving forward into the number 1 spot, and if you made it this far in the video, I think you know who the number 1 couple is, not counting Zatima. The honorable mentions are both from the haves and the have-nots. I put Charles and Candace in here mainly because, despite the fanfare of the two, which there was a lot of fan, love for these two characters, I just didn't see them as a good couple. I saw it where Charles was definitely a good man for Candace, in that he really helped her to evolve as a character, before Tyler opted to just reverse her development and make her back to the selfish, bad bitch she was earlier in the series. She finally made amends with her mom, started calling her mom or ma, and then quickly went back to Hannah as soon as money got back into the picture. And then, of course, the god-awful way the series ended. I mean, look, I think these two kind of hit the wall of being a good couple the moment that Charles had his people throw her in the back of a trunk of a car and send her back home. At that moment, it was like, yeah, you can't really recover from that. And then at that point, it was his mission to not give up, pretty much watching her every move and this and that. I'm sorry, but that's creepy. That's not love. That's just my opinion. I get the fanfare behind it. I recognize it as a very big couple in the Tyler Perry, pantheon of relationships, but it just didn't do it for me. It just seemed at that point, the show was way too realistic with the president-elect. I mean, Candace must be that good in bed that, even Charles said, or even Landis, like, he's had women all around the country, but he's in love with you. And it's like, damn, it's just like, she that bad? Is she that bad? Is Candace that bad where her in the bedroom is that good that no man can resist it? It's just unrealistic. But then again, it is Tinker Sumner, so I don't know. All right, so then the next honorable mention, a lot of people, Benny and Veronica, folks, that was a straight up affair. That's all that was. It was like, Veronica was on the prowl, being a cougar, and that was it. Trust and believe, the moment that, and this was prior to the days of where the actors and all would post a ton of stuff online, on social media, and I wasn't privy to episode synopsis and all like I am today. So trust and believe that moment where Veronica leaned over and kissed Benny and then went down on him shocked the hell out of me. It still does to this day, believe it or not. It's 2022, but going back to that one scene, I'm like, holy crap, because we couldn't believe that was happening. And then after that, it was just, so much sexual tension between the two, where there were moments where they couldn't stand each other, and despite everything, Veronica still wanted Benny. Hell, even after all the other guys that she hooked up with, like RK and I know I'm missing some people, but regardless of who she slept with after Benny, she still thought Benny was the one. Next to David, who was the one she really wanted back, Benny was that dude. And she was jealous, obviously, the whole Melissa thing and whatnot. But yeah, Benny and Veronica definitely had an interesting dynamic. I will say that much. But in terms of being a top couple, no. And the number 1 couple, folks, we all know who it is. CJ and Janine from House of Pain. I'd rather say the original than the reboot because Janine has barely been there. I mean, the episodes she was in season 1, I thought were great, particularly, episode 1, because at that point, the first episode of the reboot, it was like, yeah, these two pretty much just fell back into character. Like, their chemistry is still as fresh as it was in the original series. The only difference is it's a, new branch of the House of Pain series tree. But we've seen these two go through hell and high water, yet still find their way back to each other. I mean, from Janine's addiction to burning down the house, causing her husband and kids to move in with his aunt and uncle. Then she came in and, they both had different love interests at different times. And then next thing you know, she wound up pregnant by CJ after a drunk night together, and they renewed their vows, and, they really got their act together. That's the thing. It's like, you see them, from what we do see of them in the reboot, which again is rare, they are seemingly in a good state of their marriage again. It's like they've gotten a firm foundation on, their lifestyles. But we saw them work to get there. It was not an overnight thing. And despite Ella and Curtis having a long-lasting marriage, folks, a lot of that was prior to episode 1. Janine and CJ were married for a decent amount of time, but we really saw the growth of these two. And the thing about it is, I dare say CJ and Janine may have outdid Zatima for me. Hear me out, folks. If they had done with the reboot what I thought was the plan back in season 9 or season 1 of the reboot, however you want to number it, that CJ and Janine were going to be the new Aunt Ella and Uncle Curtis for Malik. The fact that they would kind of take this, the elderly role, because they're soon to be grandparents, to actually have them step in and really take Malik under their wing and give him real, good advice and whatnot, in the same way Curtis and Ella did for CJ when he was down, even Janine, and of course, their son Calvin. But that didn't happen. But when I'm looking at the OG series by itself, yeah, these two are definitely the cream of the crop. And the biggest argument that people have been making about the fact that, Zatima's big, but I don't think they are the biggest. A lot of people have been saying valid points about, Zatima came out at the perfect time. It's the day and age of trending topics, social media, because if social media was as big back then during House of Pain, or for better or worse, as it is now, then it's no argument that Curtis and Ella, CJ and Janine, Angela and Marcus would be as big as Zatima. I agree. I do. But I will say that Zatima definitely has a dynamic better than Angela and Marcus, better than Brad and Marcy, Candace and Charles, just because of the fact that by this point, Tyler has a lot more experience in his writing, as well as creating realistic characters. So I do feel like the argument could be made that some of these couples could be or could have been at the same level, if not above Zatima, if the same level of social media presence was there during their heyday. House of Pain, for better or worse, what have you. So this was a fun video. Trust and believe, there are a lot of other couples to talk about, but they didn't have that same level of, I guess you could say, response in the comment section on my videos and whatnot. So with that being said, out of these 5 couples in the honorable mentions, which ones were your favorites? Do you think that Zatima holds a candle to some of these couples, or do you just feel like Zatima is a whole other beast in itself? Thanks so much for tuning in. Hit the thumbs up button to show you like the video. Follow me on social media. Links are in the description below. Hit subscribe and hit the bell icon and select all. That way you don't miss out whenever I post content on the channel.